The arrival of doom. The Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had crushed entire civilizations, erased histories, and rewritten the fate of countless species. No one had ever dared to challenge them. No one had ever survived their wrath. Now their eyes turned toward a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, Earth. From the Imperial High Command, Grand Admiral Vorkan stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Dominance. Outside the viewing panels, space was filled with the might of the Empire, a fleet of 10,000 warships, each powerful enough to destroy a planet's defenses in hours. He smirked. Humans, he muttered. Primitive, weak, unworthy. To the Empire, Earth was nothing but a minor obstacle in their expansion. Their spies had gathered data. Humans had no interstellar fleet, no planetary defenses strong enough to resist an invasion. A simple conquest, just another world to be added to the Empire's rule. The invasion fleet moved into Earth's orbit. Hundreds of battleships surrounded the planet, ready to strike. Troop carriers prepared for planetary landings. It would be over in mere hours. But then, something unexpected happened. A single transmission appeared on the Empire's communication channels. It was not in the form of a desperate plea for mercy, as Vorkan expected. It was not a surrender. It was a warning. A deep, calm voice spoke in flawless Imperial standard, the language of the conquerors. Turn back now. This is your only chance. Silence followed. For the first time in his long career, Vorkan felt something strange, a chill running down his spine. He glanced at his officers. Some of them exchanged uneasy looks. No species had ever dared to threaten the Empire. It was unthinkable. A laugh broke the silence. Vorkan turned to see High General Kor, the leader of the ground forces, grinning. "They have spirit," Kor said, shaking his head. "Pathetic." Vorkan smirked, regaining his confidence. "Indeed, they believe they can scare us." He stepped forward and gave the order. "Begin the assault." The Imperial fleet unleashed its power. Energy cannons fired, raining destruction upon Earth's skies. The first wave of dropships descended toward the surface, carrying legions of Imperial soldiers. But something was wrong. The expected defensive response from Earth never came. No planetary shields were raised. No warships emerged to fight back. The humans simply watched. Then, without warning, an Imperial dreadnought exploded. The bridge of the Dominance shook violently as alarms blared. Officers scrambled to their stations. Screens flashed with warnings. "What happened?" Vorkan roared. A communications officer's voice trembled. "Sir, we don't know. One of our dreadnoughts just disappeared." Disappeared. Vorkan narrowed his eyes. "That's impossible." Another explosion rocked the fleet. This time, it was a destroyer, vanishing in a ball of fire. Then another, and another. The fleet was being picked apart. Yet there were no enemy ships, no visible attacks. Nothing. Panic spread through the Imperial ranks. They had fought thousands of battles, but never had they encountered an enemy that could destroy them without revealing itself. Then, Earth sent another message, a simple sentence. "We warned you." At that moment, Vorkan realized they had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. Humanity was not weak. They were something else entirely. And now, the Empire was at war with them. The first strike. Grand Admiral Vorkan gripped the railing of the Dominance's command deck as another explosion lit up the dark void of space. The Imperial fleet, 10,000 strong, the might of the Galactic Empire, was under attack. And yet, no enemy was visible. His officers scrambled for answers, their faces pale with confusion. "Admiral, we're losing ships, but we can't detect any hostile vessels," shouted Commander Jorah, the fleet's chief strategist. "Impossible." Vorkan snapped. His crimson eyes darted across the holographic display of the battlefield. "Scan again." There must be cloaked ships or long-range artillery. Something. The scanners ran again. Nothing. Another explosion. This time, an Imperial battleship, one of the most powerful in the fleet, broke apart as if an invisible hand had crushed it. 50,000 crew members, gone in an instant. Panic was spreading. The officers, trained to be fearless conquerors, now whispered among themselves, their voices shaking. They had never seen warfare like this. No one had. Then, a new sound filled the bridge. A transmission. Earth was speaking again. Your time is running out. Vorkan's blood ran cold, a nightmare on the ground. While chaos unfolded in orbit, Imperial ground forces had already landed. The invasion force, over 1 million strong, deployed to Earth's major cities. They expected to find resistance, tanks, soldiers, fortifications. They expected a desperate battle. Instead, they found silence. The streets were empty. No civilians. No defenders. No movement at all. High General Kor, the Empire's most feared commander, led the charge into the ruins of what humans called New York City. He stomped forward in his power armor, his red cape flowing behind him, his plasma rifle locked and loaded. "This doesn't make sense," muttered Captain Relic, his second in command. "Where are they?" Kor growled, "Hiding. Like cowards." He activated his helmet's thermal scanner. Nothing. That was when the first squad vanished. Not attacked. Not ambushed. Vanished. One moment, 12 heavily armed Imperial soldiers stood in formation. The next, they were gone. Their weapons clattered to the ground. Their armor fell as if their bodies had been erased from existence. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just gone. What the? Relic took a step back, his breath ragged. Where did they go? The radio buzzed with incoming distress calls. "They're taking us. We don't know how." Static. "Something is here. It's not a human." Static. "Help the T-A-Y-R-E-N-O-R-H-E-A-D-S." Static. Kor's fist clenched. He was no fool. This was psychological warfare. The humans were trying to break their morale. He turned to his forces, his voice thunderous. "Form, Reinekes. Stand your ground. We are the Galactic Empire." The soldiers obeyed, raising their weapons, but their hands trembled. Then something moved. A shadow darted across the rooftops. Fast, too fast. "Q-on taked." A soldier screamed, firing wildly. Plasma bolts streaked through the night sky. Nothing. Then, another scream. Kor turned just in time to see one of his lieutenants lifted into the air by an unseen force. His armor crumpled like paper, his body twisted, his helmet cracked, and then he was gone. No trace, no body, only silence. And then came the voice. A human voice. "You should have listened." Kor's heart pounded. His fingers curled around his plasma rifle. He had never felt fear before. Not like this. For the first time in his life, he realized they were outmatched. And Earth had not even begun to fight. The sky burns. Back in orbit, the Empire's losses were catastrophic. Over 50 warships were already gone, erased from existence. The dominance trembled under another impact. Vorkan barely kept his balance. "Admiral," screamed an officer, "we need to retreat." Retreat. Vorkan turned on him, his eyes blazing. "We are the Galactic Empire. We do not run from primitives." But even as he said those words, he felt doubt creeping in. And then, something appeared. A single human warship. Just one. At first, it looked unremarkable, sleek, dark, a fraction of the size of an Imperial battleship. But as Vorkan watched, his scanners began to fail. Numbers didn't make sense. Sensors glitched. The ship flickered in and out of existence. And then, the human warship moved. Not with standard thrusters, not with warp drives. It simply blinked forward. Instantly, it was in front of the fleet. Imperial warships fired. Every shot missed. "What is the A8 thing?" screamed an officer. Vorkan's mind raced. He had seen thousands of warships. Nothing like this. The human ship spoke. "You should have turned back." Then it attacked. A single beam of energy, silent, invisible, undetectable, fired from the ship. And in 1 second, 100 Imperial warships disintegrated. Vorkan's mouth went dry. This was impossible. The humans should not have this power. The Galactic Empire had ruled for 10,000 years. How was Earth winning? His trembling hand reached for the communicator. And for the first time in his career, Grand Admiral Vorkan spoke not as a conqueror, but as a man desperate to survive. "High Command, we need reinforcements." But deep in his soul, he already knew. There would be no reinforcements. There would be no victory. Earth was not just fighting back. It was hunting them. The unthinkable. The dominance shook violently as another wave of destruction spread across the fleet. Grand Admiral Vorkan barely managed to keep his footing as alarms blared around him. The once mighty Galactic Empire's war fleet, the most feared force in the known universe, was falling apart. And the worst part, they still didn't know how. "Report." Vorkan barked, his voice sharp, but inside, he felt a rare sensation. Fear. The bridge officers scrambled to make sense of the chaos. Screens flickered with unreadable data. Weapons systems failed without reason. Their own technology was betraying them. "Sir," a desperate officer turned to him, sweat dripping from his brow. "We've lost another 300 ships. There's no enemy fire, no visual confirmation of attacks. They're just vanishing." "Impossible," Vorkan hissed. "Nothing can destroy ships this fast without a trace." Yet, before his very eyes, another Imperial dreadnought collapsed inward, crushed by an unseen force. The ship imploded in absolute silence. No explosion, no debris, just a sudden collapse into nothingness. The fleet's formation was breaking. Ships were scattering, trying to escape an enemy they couldn't see. And then the human transmission came again. A voice, calm, cold. "You should have turned back." The bridge fell silent. Vorkan felt his blood turn to ice. Who were these humans? On the ground, the fall of the Empire's best. Planet-side, High General Corps and his elite invasion force had been expecting a ground war. They were not prepared for this. "Squads Omega and Zeta, report." Corps shouted into his helmet comms. Static. Nothing. His best soldiers, 2,000 elite warriors, had gone completely silent in under 5 minutes. His remaining forces held their position in the ruins of New York City, eyes darting in every direction. The once loud, powerful march of the Empire's ground forces had turned into a whisper of terror. Something was hunting them. The thermal scans picked up no movement. The motion trackers showed nothing but their own nervous breathing. The air itself felt wrong. And then, it happened. A horrible, unnatural screech echoed through the ruined streets. It wasn't the sound of a beast, nor a machine. It was something inhuman, something alien. The nearest soldier to Corps, an elite warrior with centuries of battle experience, began to shake uncontrollably. What was that? Corps' eyes narrowed. Hold formation. Weapons ready. Then the first scream rang out. A soldier 2 meters away from Corps vanished. One moment, he was there, rifle raised. The next, he was gone. No body, no remains, just gone. Panic spread instantly. Soldiers fired in every direction, their plasma rifles lighting up the dark city. Nothing. Another scream. Another soldier gone. And then another. Then another. Corps turned in time to see a soldier behind him rise into the air, held by an unseen force, his body twisted, crushed as if by invisible hands. The Galactic Empire's finest warriors, the greatest army in the universe, were being hunted like animals. Kor clenched his fists. No, this is not how we fall. He activated his communicator. Call the fleet. We need. He stopped. Because above him, in the sky, the Empire's warships were burning. The human counterattack. Back in orbit, the human warship moved again. Or rather, it blinked. 1 second, it was miles away. The next, it was right in front of an Imperial cruiser. Before the Empire could react, the cruiser split apart. No explosion, no warning, just gone. The human ship turned toward the next target. The Imperial fleet was disintegrating. "Sir, we must retreat," an officer pleaded, voice shaking. Vorken stood frozen, his pride and logic shattered. How could one ship, just one, destroy the greatest fleet in history? He forced himself to speak. "Call in reinforcements." The officer paled. "Sir, the reinforcements. They're not responding." "What?" Vorkan's hands clenched into fists. "Get me High Command. Now." The officer trembled. "Sir, High Command is gone." Vorkan's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean, gone?" The officer's voice broke. "The core worlds, they're not answering." A horrifying thought took root in Vorkan's mind. What if? No. What if Earth had already attacked the Empire's home planets? His fingers twitched. His legs felt weak. His entire belief system was collapsing. And then the human ship spoke again. "Your empire was built on fear. It ends with fear." The unthinkable was happening. The Galactic Empire, once unstoppable, was losing. And there was nothing they could do about it. The last stand of the Empire. On the ground, General Kor gathered his final battalion. Only a few hundred remained. All around him, New York City had become a graveyard. His forces were being erased. A shadow moved. Kor spun, firing his plasma rifle. The shot hit nothing. Then a voice whispered in his ear. "You should have listened." Kor whirled around, but no one was there. Another soldier screamed and disappeared. Kor's heart pounded. He had fought in 1,000 battles. He had never felt fear. But now he understood. The Galactic Empire had made a mistake that would cost them everything. And in the darkness of a dead city, the once mighty High General of the Galactic Empire fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, he surrendered. The war no one expected. The once immense fleet of the Galactic Empire, now a scattered and broken mess of burning wreckage, was a far cry from the force that had entered Earth's orbit just days before. The Dominance, Vorkan's flagship, had become little more than a floating tomb. His officers were gone, the crew reduced to a few terrified souls. The Empire's greatest warship, once the symbol of its unstoppable might, was now barely functioning, with entire sections unpowered and burning. Vorkan stared out at the void of space. The stars were no longer the quiet, reassuring lights they once were. Now, they were a reminder of his empire's arrogance. He could feel the weight of failure bearing down on him. Behind him, the voice of his final remaining officer broke the silence. "Admiral, we're out of time. We've lost contact with every fleet. High Command isn't responding. They've failed to send reinforcements." Vorkan didn't move. He could barely breathe. In his gut, a sickening realization began to form. The Empire was lost. The relentless human counteroffensive. Back on Earth, the human warship that had appeared from nowhere continued to strike with deadly precision. The strange, almost unpredictable movements of the ship seemed to defy every law of physics known to the Empire. The invisible strikes kept coming. The Imperial fleet continued to fall apart, its mighty ships reduced to nothing in a series of clean, instantaneous disintegrations. No explosions, no debris, just nothingness. And all the while, Earth's silent message echoed across the Imperial comms. "You should have turned back." There was no warning when the final blow struck. The human ship blinked once again. And in that instant, the dominance was gone. No longer a towering symbol of the Empire's strength, it had become a memory, just like the other Imperial warships. Nothing but remnants of a broken dream. Back in the Empire's command center, the officers huddled around their consoles in utter disbelief. "Sir, the dominance. It's gone. The human ship, it has destroyed it." Vorkin gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles white. He had led fleets across countless stars, defeating species far more advanced than the humans. But this was something else. The humans were no longer just fighting. They were hunting. Vorkan's voice cracked. They can't. But the unthinkable had already happened. The humans were winning. The descent of the Galactic Empire. With the destruction of dominance and the complete collapse of the fleet, the Imperial Empire's stronghold over the galaxy began to unravel. News spread like wildfire. The Empire had lost to a planet it had barely even noticed. One by one, the great Imperial systems that had dominated the galaxy for millennia began to question their allegiance. The unthinkable had happened. The humans, the people the Empire had thought were beneath notice, had destroyed their most powerful weapon, erased their fleet from the galaxy, and left the Empire without a single victory. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Civilizations that had once bowed to the Empire now withdrew their support. Planets that had relied on Imperial protection faced collapse as their enemies turned against them. The once sturdy structure of the Empire was beginning to crack. Systems were seceding. Allies were defecting. And all the while, humanity remained silent, watching from the shadows. Their warning, repeated with every strike, echoed through the galaxy. You should have turned back. And the Empire had ignored it. The hunt continues, but it wasn't over yet. The war was not won, not yet. As the remnants of the Imperial fleet limped away, the human warship continued its merciless hunt. It was no longer about destruction. It was about punishment. The Empire had sent its armies to Earth with the arrogance that they would win in hours. Now, it was time for them to understand the true cost of their actions. The ship blinked again. This time, it appeared above Coruscant, the beating heart of the Empire. The planet that had once stood as the capital of the galaxy's might was now on the brink of collapse. Below, the once glorious cityscape was in ruins. The Empire's last defenders, hastily assembled from shattered fleets and desperate remnants of military forces, tried to organize a defense. They fired at the human warship, but their weapons were useless. Nothing could touch it. It blinked again, and with each blink, one Imperial stronghold after another was obliterated. Coruscant's military towers fell, their once impenetrable shields vanishing like vapor. Within hours, the city was nothing but rubble, the very heart of the Empire now a barren wasteland. And still, humanity's message rang out. You should have turned back. The final warning. By now, the Empire's leadership was gone. The high command had been decimated. The few remaining officers who had survived the initial strikes found themselves in hiding, powerless to stop the inevitable. Grand Admiral Vorkan, alone on the bridge of the ruined dominance, watched helplessly as the last of his fleet disintegrated. His once grand ambitions to conquer the stars, to subjugate the universe to the Empire's will, had turned to dust. Then the final transmission came through, not from Earth, but from the human warship itself. It wasn't a message of triumph. It wasn't a cry for victory. It was a single sentence, cold and final. We warned you. Vorkan closed his eyes. He had never known such shame. It wasn't just the loss of the Empire. It was the loss of everything he had believed in. The idea that the Empire was unbeatable, that it could crush all before it. And now, Earth stood as a monument to a terrifying truth. No one was safe, not even the mightiest empire. The Galactic Empire, once a force of pure domination, had been crushed by a single underestimated species, humanity. The human warship disappeared, leaving only the remnants of what had once been the greatest galactic power. The battle was over. And the Empire, it was no more. The true face of humanity. As the dust settled over the smoldering remains of what had once been the heart of the Galactic Empire, the galaxy fell into an eerie, oppressive silence. A silence so profound it seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space itself. The shockwaves from Earth's unexpected war against the Empire continued to spread, reverberating across the stars. The once unshakable belief that the Galactic Empire was invincible had been obliterated, shattered by a species the Empire had long deemed insignificant. The Empire's command structure was in ruins. Only a handful of Imperial officers remained, scattered like insects in the wake of a hurricane. They had thought themselves the gods of the universe, their power absolute. Yet, in a matter of days, they had lost everything. A new era begins. As the final transmissions from Earth echoed through the galaxy, the few remaining Imperial ships that had escaped Earth's wrath limped toward the unknown, leaving behind their former colonies to fend for themselves. The humiliation they had suffered would never be erased. They were now the hunted. On Earth, humanity stood as a quiet sentinel over the wreckage of the Empire. The planet's people, who had once lived in relative obscurity among the stars, now found themselves at the center of a new galactic order. It was an order that had been forged not through diplomacy, not through alliances, but through sheer will, power, and a quiet, unyielding resolve. And in that silence, humanity's true nature began to reveal itself. The human weapon. For decades, Earth had been ridiculed, ignored, and underestimated. The Galactic Council had deemed humans too primitive, too disconnected from the galactic community to be anything more than a nuisance. But humanity had been playing a different game. No one had seen the true power of Earth, not until it was too late. The humans hadn't been fighting a war for control or conquest. They had been fighting for survival, for a future free of oppression. And in that fight, they had proven something far more dangerous than any weapon or army: their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to rise when others would fall. The human warship that had torn through the Empire's might was only the most visible symbol of Earth's power. Behind it, an entire network of strategic minds had devised the perfect counterattack. They had studied the Empire's weaknesses, exploited them with precision, and launched a response that not only defeated the invaders, but made it clear that humanity was no longer to be underestimated. But it was not just technology that made humans so formidable. It was their courage, their unrelenting will to protect their own. They had fought for each other, had sacrificed for one another, and now they were reaping the rewards of that unity. The first steps to a new empire. In the wake of the Empire's collapse, a new council was formed, a council made up of the diverse and once ignored species that had been crushed under the Empire's heel. But this time, it wasn't the mighty or the powerful who dominated the talks. It was the humans. The first message Earth sent to the galaxy was simple, yet powerful. The Empire is no more. It is time to rebuild. Humanity's approach was not one of subjugation or conquest. It was one of unity. The once victimized species across the galaxy found themselves standing side by side with humans, working together to establish a new order. An order where no one race would dominate, no one species would be the master. It was an order based on respect, cooperation, and a shared vision for the future. But even as humanity extended an olive branch, there were still whispers of fear. Some species, those who had been allied with the Empire, were reluctant to trust the humans. They had seen the brutal power humanity wielded, and they knew that this new era could bring consequences. Humanity's answer was simple: we are not the Empire. But do not mistake our silence for weakness. The hidden power of humanity. What the galaxy didn't realize, what no one had expected, was that humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. The Empire had been so sure of its power, so certain of its ability to control every situation, that it never considered the possibility of humans rising against them. But humans had been quietly observing, learning, and waiting. They had built their power not through constant warfare, but through innovation. Earth's technology had advanced in ways that the Empire never saw coming. Every attack, every calculated move, was part of a larger strategy. A strategy that would bring about the end of the Empire and the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. What the Empire never understood was that humans were not just survivors. They were builders of technology, of alliances, and of communities that could withstand the test of time. Their ability to adapt to any situation, to take on any challenge, was their most dangerous weapon. And it was that weapon that had defeated the Empire, a new galactic order. As the weeks passed, the shattered remnants of the Empire's former vassal planets began to rebuild. Under the guidance of Earth and its allies, they began to forge new economies, new alliances, and a new way of life. The humans led the charge, offering their knowledge, their technology, and most importantly, their wisdom to help others rise from the ashes of the old order. But not all were content with this shift in power. Some factions within the galaxy, particularly those who had once been part of the Empire's military or elite, felt a deep resentment towards humanity. These factions began to rally, forming new coalitions, vowing to reclaim their former positions of power. They still believed that might made right, and they would not rest until they had returned to the top. For them, humanity represented a challenge to the old way, a challenge they would not easily accept. But humanity was prepared. They had fought for their survival, and they would fight again if necessary. The calm before the storm. The galaxy had been forever changed. The old order was gone, and in its place stood a new era, one in which humanity held the keys to the future. Earth had been the catalyst for this transformation, but they were not alone. They had built alliances, formed new friendships, and offered the galaxy a chance to begin again. But deep in the far reaches of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of humanity's watchful eyes, an ancient force was stirring. A force that had survived the fall of the Empire and was now preparing for its own rise. The Empire was gone, but the shadow of its legacy still loomed large, and those who had once ruled in its name were not ready to let go of their power. They would find a way to reclaim what they had lost. Humanity had won, but the war was not over. The Empire's shadow returns. For weeks, the galaxy had been in shock, still reeling from the overwhelming defeat of the Galactic Empire. The humans, once thought to be insignificant and primitive, now stood as the undisputed power in the galaxy. Their silent victory against the Empire had sparked a new era, one of peace, or so it seemed. But peace, like all things in the galaxy, was fleeting. In the shadowed depths of space, far from Earth's watchful gaze, something stirred. Something ancient. Something that had long waited for the fall of the Empire. The hidden power. Deep within the forgotten corners of the galaxy, the Syndicate of the Dark Stars was regrouping. A network of former Imperial officers, military leaders, and loyalists. They had survived the fall of the Empire by staying hidden, biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Now, with the Empire gone, they believed the galaxy was ripe for reclamation. The Syndicate had always existed in the shadows, pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating events from afar. The rise of humanity had been the one thing they hadn't accounted for. Their once unchallenged power had crumbled in an instant, and now they faced a new, terrifying foe, the unknown power of humanity. But that did not stop them. The Syndicate had resources, hidden technologies, and most importantly, a will to restore what they had lost. They knew the galaxy could never be truly ruled by a species like humanity. The old ways of the Empire, the methods of control, fear, and submission, would return. And it would begin with a single devastating blow. A return to power. The Syndicate's first target was an outlying system, a planet recently liberated from the clutches of the Empire. It was a place of growing hope, a new home for many who had fled the Empire's reign. The Syndicate sent a message, cryptic and terrifying. Your time has come. The Empire's shadow has returned. Before the newly formed Galactic Council, composed of humans and their allies, could react, the system was attacked. An entire fleet, hidden in the darkest regions of space, emerged like a storm, launching a devastating surprise strike on the unprepared planet. Their weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Energy pulses that disrupted the very fabric of space itself, tearing through shields and defenses like paper. The world's defense forces were caught off guard, and within hours, the planet's capital was burned to the ground. As the survivors fled, a chilling message came through the galaxy-wide comms. The Empire is not gone. It never was. We will return to reclaim what is ours. Humanity's response. The news spread like wildfire. For the first time since the fall of the Empire, the galaxy felt the stirring of fear once again. On Earth, the Galactic Council convened immediately. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered, but one voice cut through the crowd, the voice of humanity's leader. She had seen the rise of the Empire, the fall of their greatest adversary, and now she would face this new threat head-on. We did not fight for our freedom only to let the shadows of the past consume us again. Her words were powerful, but she knew that the Syndicate's return was a force not to be taken lightly. Humans had fought and bled to end the Empire, but they now faced an enemy more elusive, more dangerous, one that had operated in the shadows for centuries. The Syndicate was not a traditional army. It was a network of spies, shadow operatives, and hidden technologies that had been weaving through the fabric of the galaxy since the first days of Imperial rule. They were a ghost in the machine, and now they had returned to claim the pieces they had left behind. The human military began mobilizing, but the fight was different now. This wasn't going to be a war of direct confrontation. It was going to be a war of intelligence, subterfuge, and shadow battles. The Syndicate was using their advanced cloaking technologies, mind control devices, and space manipulation weapons to turn the tide in their favor. The Galactic Council issued a warning to all systems. We are not the Empire, but we will defend this galaxy with everything we have. Humanity knew the stakes were higher now. The Syndicate would not stop until they had regained control, and Earth was ready to fight back, not just for their own survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. The human strategy. Humanity's strategy was born from their greatest strength, their creativity and adaptability. They would not engage the Syndicate in a direct, traditional war. Instead, they used their intelligence to outthink the enemy. They knew they were not fighting a conventional battle. They had to fight smart. The first major move was to take their technology to the next level. Earth's scientists, working with alien allies, began to reverse engineer the Syndicate's cloaking devices. It was an unprecedented move, taking the enemy's technology and making it their own. It was risky, but the humans knew that to fight against a shadowy enemy, they needed to become invisible themselves. As the human engineers worked day and night, their military forces began sabotaging Syndicate operations across the galaxy. Using the Syndicate's own methods against them, the humans infiltrated their hidden bases, striking at their heart before they could strike back. But even with their new advantages, the Syndicate remained elusive. Their forces, scattered across multiple systems, were difficult to track and eliminate. They had set up safe havens on distant, forgotten planets, where no one would dare to look. A galaxy on edge. The Syndicate, despite the growing human resistance, remained an almost invisible force in the galaxy. They worked from the shadows, slowly regaining their lost power and influence. They knew the galaxy was beginning to turn its eyes toward Earth, and they knew that soon the humans would come for them. It was a game of cat and mouse. Humanity had to strike fast and strike hard, but each victory was followed by more mysteries, more questions. How had the Syndicate returned so quickly? What secret weapon did they possess? And more importantly, who was leading them? The final confrontation. The war had just begun. While the Syndicate fought from the shadows, humanity stood ready, facing an enemy unlike any they had ever fought before. Earth had shown the galaxy the true face of humanity, their strength, courage, and resilience. But the true test was still to come. The Syndicate had always been the silent rulers, and now they were more dangerous than ever. The galaxy's future hung in the balance. Would humanity's light shine through once again, or would the Empire's shadow rise to claim its dominance over the stars? The battle had just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The final gambit. The galaxy was on the precipice of a new era, but in the depths of space, the battle between humanity and the Syndicate of the Dark Stars raged in the shadows. After the Empire's fall, humanity had hoped for peace, but instead, they found themselves faced with a challenge greater than any they had anticipated, a force that operated not in the open, but in the hidden corners of the galaxy. The Syndicate, an organization born of betrayal, deception, and shadows, had quietly rebuilt its strength. The remnants of the Empire's loyalists, its rogue military commanders, and its secretive factions had come together under a single banner: the return of imperial rule. However, humanity was no longer the naive species the Syndicate had once dismissed. The humans had adapted. Earth had shown their strength in battle, in diplomacy, and in sheer willpower. But the question now was, could they outsmart a foe that had always operated in the dark? The hidden hand. The Syndicate had always been a puzzle. An organization without a central command, a shadow network so intertwined with the galaxy's most powerful entities that no one truly knew where its influence began and ended. They had infiltrated governments, manipulated markets, and operated behind the scenes for centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to reassert their dominance. But now, with their identity known to humanity, the Syndicate had to change tactics. They could no longer operate in the shadows. They were forced to play their hand. But playing against humanity's strategic genius would prove to be their greatest mistake. Their plan was simple: to cripple Earth from within. They would not launch an all-out war. Instead, they would infiltrate the core of human power, their systems, their leaders, and their society. The Syndicate believed that if they could sow discord, doubt, and chaos within humanity's new alliance, they could turn the tables in their favor. The Syndicate unleashed a sophisticated network of cyber attacks, mind control devices, and subversive agents into the heart of Earth's infrastructure. Within days, entire communication networks were disrupted. Key military leaders were compromised. Rumors and lies spread like wildfire, poisoning the once unified human front. The Syndicate's agents worked from within the political system, sowing the seeds of corruption, weakening alliances, and making it appear as though humanity was on the brink of civil war. Every faction, every factional leader was torn apart by suspicion, pushing humanity to the edge of a precipice. But the humans did not break. The counterstrike. As the Syndicate's web of chaos spread, humanity had already set its own plan into motion. Earth's military had built a secret weapon, something that could cut through the Syndicate's web of manipulation, a counter-network designed to neutralize any attack. They had anticipated this moment. The human counter-network, codenamed Project Omen, was the culmination of the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. It wasn't just a defense system. It was a counter-offensive intelligence network, capable of tracking every Syndicate operation, decrypting their messages, and exposing their agents in real time. The brainchild of humanity's most brilliant minds, Project Omen was designed to do one thing: find the shadow and expose it. As the Syndicate's agents worked to destabilize Earth, the counter-network began working behind the scenes to unmask them. Humanity's intelligence community, aware of the Syndicate's long history of covert operations, began turning the tables on their enemies. The human military moved swiftly, infiltrating Syndicate cells, uncovering hidden bases, and cutting off their supply chains. The Syndicate had underestimated the adaptability and resilience of humans once again. But even as humanity pushed back, the Syndicate wasn't backing down. Their power ran deep, and their plans were far from finished. The heart of the Syndicate. As the battle on the surface raged, humanity knew that the Syndicate had one last card to play. It was their trump card, the final gambit that had been hidden from the rest of the galaxy for centuries. The Syndicate's ultimate weapon, a weapon that could disrupt the very fabric of space-time itself. The Syndicate had perfected space manipulation technology, a device that could create artificial black holes, capable of swallowing entire systems. Their plan was simple: destroy humanity's colonies and the Galactic Council, scattering the remains of the human race across the galaxy, making Earth a target for annihilation. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, a weapon so dangerous that the Syndicate had hidden it deep within a lost, forgotten system, shielded from detection. The final battle would not be fought in the open. It would be fought in the cold, uncharted regions of space. Humanity's top intelligence officers quickly learned of the Syndicate's ultimate plan. The Syndicate was preparing to deploy the weapon and wipe out humanity's final strongholds. But Earth would not go down without a fight. They would not let the Syndicate control the galaxy through fear. The final battle. As the human fleet mobilized, a plan of desperation was set in motion. The Project Omen network had pinpointed the Syndicate's hidden location, and a fleet of Earth's most powerful warships was assembled, each one a silent shadow, invisible to Syndicate detection systems. A human task force, including the best of humanity's engineers, military tacticians, and spies, was sent on a suicide mission to infiltrate the Syndicate's base and destroy their ultimate weapon before it could be deployed. The final battle was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't a war of armies clashing on open battlefields. It was a battle of intelligence, stealth, and wills clashing in the void. Human ships slipped silently through the Syndicate's defenses, blinking in and out of existence using newly developed cloaking technology. Explosions rocked the Syndicate's base as human soldiers infiltrated the heart of the operation, fighting through wave after wave of Syndicate agents, each one more desperate than the last. As the Syndicate launched their final attack, humanity's task force reached the core of the weapon. The race was on. Could they destroy the device before the Syndicate could wipe out their colonies? The moment of truth. The final moments of the battle played out in agonizing silence. The Syndicate's weapon hummed, ready to fire, but the humans had reached the core. Explosions rang out. The weapon's countdown continued. Then, with a deafening explosion, the Syndicate's ultimate weapon was destroyed. The black hole generator, designed to rip apart entire star systems, was neutralized. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. The Syndicate's forces began to collapse. Their agents were exposed, their power stripped away. And humanity, once again, stood victorious. The aftermath. With the final gambit destroyed, the Syndicate was no more. Its agents scattered across the stars, their dream of reclaiming the galaxy crushed by the very species they had underestimated. The galaxy was left in the hands of those who had proven that no force was too strong to break. Humanity, though scared by the battles, had emerged as the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, not through fear, but through their ability to adapt, innovate, and survive. And as the galaxy began to rebuild, one thing was clear: humanity would never again be underestimated.